Welcome to another edition of Success Talk. This is Dr. Herbert Harris bringing you another super achiever. Each week we interview and speak with people who have achieved great things in their lives, but who have also faced obstacles and barriers, and they have overcome them to make their breakthrough. And today we have my good friend Kyle Dixon. Welcome to Success Talk, Kyle.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Glad to be here. Great opportunity.
Well, I tell you, man, I number one, I love teachers. Okay. My mom was a teacher, my aunt was a teacher.
Okay.
And I love people who are working with our young people, because we're like a basketball team and we're the first string, and they got a game that goes on forever. So you got to have a second string and a third
Yeah.
string. Yeah. So,
Dude.
yeah, Kyle, tell us a little about your background. Where were you raised? You have brothers and sisters. What are your early years like? And that got you started on this journey?
Wow. Yeah. So again, welcome. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, so my early childhood, pretty good childhood. I come from a two-parent household. Mother and father worked. I'm the youngest of two. I have an older brother who's about roughly 5 years older than I am. So I follow behind him a lot. Showed me a lot of things, beat up on me sometimes. And sometimes I put licks back, what I'm saying?
Yes.
But no, very encouraging household. Mother was a social worker, worked for the Metropolitan Housing. I mainly grew up, born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, Music City.
Hmm.
Um, my father, blue collar mostly, worked at a Methodist publishing house.
Hmm.
And just a very tight knit family. Really about education, really about learning, really about growth and culture and development. They were both really adamant about learning and being someone of good character.
Yes.
So I picked that up a lot from them. My mother was heavily into the arts, so she took my brother and I to black plays, black events, anything that was dealing with like black folks and African that was positive. She was like, "We're going." So
Wow. Wow.
yeah, so she was very much into that. My father was into like music and arts and really about like exploring and learning. Heavy readers, both of them heavy readers. So I had that a little bit of that balance in there, in my childhood, but very productive. Grew up in a neighborhood mostly with black families. I would say middle class, and but most of my friends had their mother and fathers in the household. So for me, that was a huge norm.
Yeah. Well, when I look at today, as a matter of fact, you work a lot with young people. Do you find that two-family household that, they say it takes a village,
Mhm.
that village concept, do you think that was a great asset? And do you see anything similar today in the Black community?
Indeed. It was a priceless asset. I didn't know how much it was an asset until I started getting out to the workforce and started teaching. My initial teaching experience started in Chicago after I
Mhm.
graduated from college from Fisk University, HBCU in Nashville, Tennessee. But yeah, that's been a priceless asset. And the more and more I work with young people, work with our children, because I don't call them kids, I call them children, because
Mm.
words have power and influence. And I got that from Malcolm X when he was doing his research with Alex Haley, and Alex Haley was writing his book on autobiography of Malcolm X, one of my favorite books. And I remember Malcolm mentioning that, no, Alex Haley mentioning that he wrote kids as a shorthand term to Malcolm's children. Malcolm was like, no, they're not kids. They're not Billy Goats.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
children. Like I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay. But yeah, working with our youth, working with our children, I definitely see how the parental influence is major. Whether you have so-called single household, whether you have a two-parent household, that two-parent household in a healthy environment gives that child that balance, that masculine, as people say now, the masculine and feminine perspectives. There were times in my household where I felt my mother was being maybe too hard on me, and then my dad would come in and kind of ease the situation. And there were times where my dad was hard on me, maybe for obvious reason. My mother would come in and kind of ease the situation. So it was that balance that you need from the different
Mhm.
perspectives of family, and also just that kind of the different ways of they view life, the experiences. Like I mentioned before, my mother took us to art events. My dad would spend time with us, taking us to like sports events and things like that. So it's just that balance you need. You can't get everything from one person, and that
Mm.
speaks to that communal aspect. And within a family is a microcosm of community, and then of course you have the community at large. And like they say that after proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a child to raise a village.
Ooh, now you need to tell me a little more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. The child is the ones that their new life, their new energy coming into the community, and they allow people to be able to share their gifts, share their wisdom, share their experiences with this child, and in that it encourages them to be better. That child
Wow.
is like a kind of a new, not a new experiment, but they're a new perspective on life. They
Yeah.
say children help to keep us young.
Yeah.
So with that, it allows us to feel like we are maybe reborn, maybe re-energized, and that we have hope. Children represent hope. Children represent the possibilities of what could become that are positive. So,
Mm.
so a child helps to raise a village as well because it reminds us that we were once that age, and also lets us know that we have much more to do and to share with others.
Wow. You know, of all that's the first time I've ever heard that, Kyle, because I can see that. In other words, when I was a child, there were things you didn't do in front of the kids. You always presented you might say, a collective vision of harmony and of peace and of structure. And
Hmm.
so the kids, the children, the children,
Yeah.
the children, I could see that making the village better because it really put the village on good behavior because one thing we recognize is how much of an example we set for children, not so much by what we say, by what they see us do
Yes.
and how they see us conduct our affairs. So, man, that's a powerful piece. The children raise the expectations of the village because the village wants to put forth the best foot possible. Man,
That's right.
thank you for that.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir. You're welcome.
yeah. That's beautiful.
I can't take credit for it. That's from our African cultural heritage and knowing, but it's
Yeah.
definitely something
Well,
powerful.
so many times when we share thoughts, it's like we're a conduit. If we had not made the connection, we couldn't be the conduit. So,
True, true. True.
so as they
Indeed.
say, you can't condu anything that you haven't done. So,
Right, right, right.
yeah,
Good boy.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Now,
Yes.
have you always wanted to be a teacher?
Uh, I would say no.
Hmm.
I think my life, when I look back at my life path up to this point, I think it was cultivated in me from a young age. But I know I never thought of me really being a teacher because one, I saw sometimes how much flack they caught, and a part of me just I felt like I would mess up somebody's child. Like
Mm.
when I first started when I was younger, I was like I don't want to mess up anybody's child. Like I don't want to make sure like what if I make a mistake? What if I say something wrong that's not true? And that's farthest from what I've experienced.
Mm.
I kind of fell into the profession after graduation because I had a hard time actually finding a job. And a fellow friend of mine who graduated a year before me in Chicago was saying, "Hey, my dad has a small school that he's running on the west side of Chicago, and a small Lutheran school." And he was like, "Look, we're looking for young teachers, and I think you'd be a good fit." And he's like, "Look, worst case scenario, you tried for a couple of weeks or 2 weeks. If it's just not your fit, we'll find somebody else." And I said,
Right.
"Well, okay, well, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give it a try." It was a small school. I had I say total amount of youth in the school were maybe 50, 55, 60, if that.
Uh-huh.
And I was scared. I was sweating.
Hmm.
I was sweating because I had second and third graders, so I had the young ones.
Hmm.
But with their guidance and with some mentorship, as they call it, I like to call it jegna, somebody being a jegna to me, a older
Uh-huh.
scholar. I just took to it. I just took to it. And
Wow.
when I think about it, and when I ask my friends, now they're like, "Oh yeah, man, you was that kind. Yeah, I could." I'm not surprised. I'm like, really? Like
Yeah.
yeah, you always were reading, you were always studying, you were always learning about different things. So
Hmm. So
Yeah.
it fit. So what did you want to work in that you couldn't find a job?
I wanted to actually, my initial occupation coming out of college, I actually wanted to become an entertainment lawyer.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Wow. Yeah.
And I want to get into that because I'm really into music and arts and culture.
Hmm.
And I had a DJ show when I was at school called the called the Art of Raw.
The art of raw. Uh-huh.
Art of Raw, based off of hip hop, R&B, and a little bit of reggae. Me and a good friend of mine, we did it for about a year and a half. It was got pretty good, coverage. And I've always been a music lover, and I was like, well, I don't necessarily want to be a performer, but
Uh-huh.
maybe I can help the people who are performers, who are artists, who are athletes. Because I was
Yes.
also into sports as well. So I was like, well, let me help them on the back end, make sure they don't get taken for their contracts, make sure they negotiate contracts, whatever. So I was like, I love reading, I love writing, and I love sports and entertainment to that degree. So let me try to combine the two.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? So did you go to law school?
I did not.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Just to be really transparent, I mean, I took the study exams, I
Uh-huh.
paid for it. When I even didn't have put on my credit card, I didn't have the money. And there was just a lot of stuff going on in my family at the time, with myself at the time. I'm 22, 23 years old in
Uh-huh.
Chicago, and it was a lot of things happening. I had a girlfriend at the time. So just a lot of things going on in the background that was just causing a lot of stress, and I didn't really know how to handle it fully. So I took the test, I took the LSAT, and I didn't get the score I really wanted to,
Uh-huh.
it hurt. It hurt emotionally. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie, like it really
Yeah.
hurt me at the
Yeah.
time. And I said, I was teaching as well during that time. I said,
Uh-huh.
let me spend like another maybe year teaching and see how I feel. And if I feel like I still want to go to law school, I'll continue. But if not,
Uh-huh.
let me see about this teaching thing. And
Yeah.
it just progressed.
As they say, the rest is history.
This
Yeah.
is history.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that was my profession, as an attorney, entertainment law.
Wow. Okay.
And my first book, if you go online, it's still available. It was called How to Make Money in Music
Wow.
by Herbie Harris. I had
Okay.
in those days I used to write my stage name.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, it was funny. Um,
Wow.
I was a BMI writer, and
Okay.
there was another Herbert Harris who was also a BMI writer, and we
Hmm.
and we all lived around the corner from Herbie Hancock.
No way.
Yeah, in New
Oh,
York, and we all banked at the same bank.
wow. Wow. You can't get it. Wow.
Yeah,
That's so
and
ironic.
and so at one point they before the computer, I think the Herbert Harris on 90, I think he was on 91st, I was on 93rd Street. That Herbert Harris got a nice check from BMI, but they didn't have the computer in those days. I guess they sent it to him and a clerk opened it and they credited it to my account.
Oh.
Okay. And of course, I thought, God has blessed me. Thank you, Lord. And yeah, so eventually it all came to light and BMI said, "Look, you got to change." He was a writer before you were. This is getting confusing, and so I tried a few variations. So I became Herbie Harris, Herby,
Wow.
and yeah.
That's amazing stuff. Wow. Wow. Legend. Well, all y'all legends because y'all got the same cool name almost. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
man.
Yeah. Herbie Hancock.
So
Yeah.
and so we had the same thought. My partner Lucian Farrar was a singer and a creator, and we realized that we managed a couple of groups, and we realized that people didn't know nothing about the business of music. And the
Mm-hmm.
main book was a book called This Business of Music by Bill Kraslovsky.
Hmm.
And I couldn't understand it.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. As a matter of fact, in later years, Bill Kraslovsky and I did some seminars together.
Mm-hmm.
And he said my book made his book understandable.
Wow.
Hmm?
Check that
So
out. Wow.
yeah, yeah, how to make money in music, and our theme was to to teach that the business side of music.
Hmm.
And I was actually one of the founding lawyers of the Black Entertainment Lawyers Association, BELA.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. So
I
it's
mean,
interesting.
no,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, Dr. Hess, I knew you were a heavyweight, but I didn't know you went that deep in the archives, man. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Well, I still make music, man. I just talked to the studio today. I have a record right now on online,
Mm.
iTunes called The Time to Love Is Here.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. By Dr. H.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And I
All
just talked
right.
to the studio, and this is a learning point. We
Mm-hmm.
started making the record, and when the pandemic hit,
Mm-hmm.
I decided I wasn't going in anybody's studio. And
Okay.
so I laid down the tracks, I played most of the instruments. I had done a reasonable background, but it was more a reference background. I sang the background. And so I told the engineer, let's mix it and get it done. And he said it. So I didn't see him, and we didn't see each other for almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I always felt that the record was not complete. So
Mm-hmm.
although we released it and it's given us a nice sense of, people like it. But I just talked to the studio today. I said, I'm going back in. I want to rewrite the first verse and I want to add a chorus because I want it to be like an anthem. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So,
That's amazing. I
yeah.
mean, music is just so powerful. Like, I mean, I can't imagine my life without it, really. Like,
Hmm.
my friends and I, I have friends who are DJs, my close friends, all of us love music. I grew up with it around the house. I grew up in the neighborhood. I mean, it really is part of our historical heritage,
Yeah.
ancient culture
Yeah.
heritage. But it's just amazing how those tones and vibrations can just change your whole mood, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so now are you able to integrate the music in with your teaching? Because I would think that that might be a good sort of commonality to communicate with some of the students.
Yes, yes. Actually, another good friend of mine, like a brother to me, we started a media production company, Precise Minds Filmworks, in Chicago, and we actually started working with the youth using hip hop. We created a hip hop program called Hip Hop 101, which
Mm,
the acronym stands for Higher Infinite Power, Helping Our People One on One. So we did that on the west side of Chicago with another colleague of ours. And we did it for a number of years, and it was really successful. We still keep up with some of them even to this day, and most of them are doing pretty well in life, which is the measuring tool,
hmm.
So, but yeah, like we incorporate hip hop. I work with the hip hop program in Chicago outside of our own program. But yeah, music, and I incorporate music lyrics in my teaching with some of the students. I put quotes on the board. I try to ask them what they're listening to because those are influential. When I was growing up, I was heavy into hip hop. My father started getting me into jazz. My mom got me into funk. So
Hmm.
like those things that I'm able to even categorize time and space with music. Where
Hmm.
was I when I heard this song? What was I feeling when I heard this song?
Yeah.
Those memories are attached to those moments. So
Yes.
I try to use that in regards to my teaching my own archival and also relating to my students.
Wow. Beautiful. Hey, you know what, Kyle, that's powerful because that gives you a common platform to deal with.
Yeah.
Now, when we were talking earlier, uh, how did you come to encounter the 12 universal laws of success?
Yes, yes. So it's an interesting story because I was in Nashville at the time, visiting family, and I think you and I talked about it. Famous bookstore, community staple, Al-Keebalan bookstore in Nashville, Tennessee, down the street from Tennessee State and from Fisk University. And I was in there as because I like to patronize and support it since I grew up with the store. And I see this bright yellow book on
Hmm.
the shelves, and I'm like, oh, with the
Hmm.
bold black letters, like behind you. And I was like, oh, 12 Universal Laws of Success. I'm like, and then it says Super Achiever Edition. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, this is
Yeah.
this is serious. And to be honest, at the time, I was still grieving my father. My father had transitioned
Mm.
maybe about a year and a half before that, and I was still grieving, going through my counseling, going through my therapy.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I saw the book and I'm like, I'm a reader, I'm a learner,
Uh-huh.
I'm a reader. And I'm like, hey, I think this will help me in my process of my healing
Hmm.
and getting back on track of what I want to do with my life and where I want to go next. And and I picked it up and got it, and it was just, it was just so straightforward. It was so straightforward, so needed at the time, and it was definitely one of the main tools that helped me to get, back on track as far as healing and just being more focused on what I want to achieve and accomplish. It was right on time.
Wow, man. Well, Kyle, let us take a little break for a moment. I want to just switch tracks and come back and talk about your favorite part of the book. So let's just
Mhm.
take a moment's break. Welcome back to Success Talk. Dr. Herbert Harris and our guest, Kyle Dixon. Kyle, you were talking a little about the 12 universal laws of success. Was there any chapter or section that really stood out for you?
There were a number of them, but I always go back to that first chapter of thought. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, all the other chapters are amazing. They really are. They really relate to each one. They all overlap. But when I thought about it, it's the thought piece. The thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because without that, your actions, your practices, they're not as efficient if the thought isn't there, if the mindset isn't already set, if the mind isn't set already, then
Mm.
you're not going to get as much as you think you deserve or that you're looking to get from it. So yeah, that power thought is huge, man. It really is.
Yeah.
That is the beginning. And that's one thing as I was doing my counseling and therapy and my meditations, just my thoughts,
Mm.
what I was thinking, why I was thinking, as you talked about, self and environment and associations. It's just like all those things like that's the foundation for me.
Wow. Yes. Thank you so much. Well, you sure appreciate it, man. I always love to get people's feedback on the book because it's one of those things that sort of shows up when you need it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes,
Now,
and I've mentioned
uh,
it to like many of my friends,
uh-huh.
just in like just sharing those ideas presented in the book, with my own like experiences too. But again, it stated so simply,
Yeah.
and it's no confusion in it. It's straightforward. It's not too much. I mean, you could really keep going with it, but I mean, it's enough to really make it plain for somebody who's searching for that type of knowledge.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So now you're still teaching now, right?
Yes, I'm still teaching.
Uh-huh.
Still teaching.
Now, are you in Chicago or New York now?
I'm in New York. I've been here in
Uh-huh.
New York now going on 12 years. So
Uh-huh.
I'm like mad. He's like, you know, man. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, but I love, teaching in the urban environments. New York is my home. I still got love for Chicago and Nashville though.
Hmm.
I can't say
Yes.
that.
Yeah. So what's the thrust now? You're teaching, but is that the final destination? Are you moving on to another elevation?
Yeah, I think this point in my life and me teaching now 21 plus years, I really like and I love I like and love being in the classroom. I still
Hmm.
do. But I think I would be better served in more like managerial I think maybe you and I have talked about managerial and just working more in the community, more like independent.
Hmm.
Because just the things I've seen and learned, read, experienced, like especially going through COVID and going through the net well, eventually the transitioning of my mother. So now both of my parents are transitioned. Like just dealing with that and recognizing how much emotionally immature and underdeveloped a lot of us are,
Hmm.
and being able to add that piece to my instruction now.
Hmm.
Again, me going through my process, understanding how we process certain things, why we do it, and also wanting to reach a level of success, whatever that may be for a person. I think I can add that better, maybe outside the classroom.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, due to a lot of the restrictions and a lot of the laws in regards to education, pre-COVID and during COVID and now post-COVID, I just see a lot of our children and a lot of our community just hurting. We really are in pain emotionally.
Wow. Well, I think someone once said, I don't remember who said, he said when white people sneeze, black people get pneumonia.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. And
yeah.
so whatever the impact of COVID in the overall the majority community and the black community, I perceive it as being much more impactful, much more detrimental.
Hmm. I do. I agree.
Yeah.
I
Do you
agree.
think do you think the kids have really, really suffered a lot? Do you think what one that they've suffered, but do you see a path to kind of get them back in cycle, or is it I don't want to say a lost cause, but is it something that's almost been permanent, a permanent type of damage that we're all going to have to live with?
Mm. Yeah, that's something I've been talking about, thinking about in my own experiences, but also with my peers and my colleagues.
Hmm.
We talk about this a lot. And as I said before, children are our future. They are present in our future. And, I get annoyed and sometimes angered when I hear, adults say, these children, what are we going to do with them? Like they're just running them up. I'm like, you do realize that children don't raise themselves, right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
children do not raise themselves, but when they do, this is what happens. This is what can happen, especially in this type of society where we're discriminated against, we're held down from certain resources, prevented from certain resources, and treated a certain way, negatively mostly.
Uh-huh.
Like children don't raise themselves, and you have to pour into these young people in order to get the results that we want. And when we allow society to tell us that our children are this and this and that, it's like, okay, well, what created this scenario, first of all? And then also, do we have the tools and the collective tools I'm talking about? Do we
Hmm.
have the collective tools in order to change the dynamic of the negativity? Yes, we do. Especially from your generation, Dr. Harris. We had, going through the civil rights, going through the Black Power movement, going through Nixon and going through the Cold Wars. And I mean, we can endure all this going through the crack era, with
Hmm.
the influx of drugs in our communities. Um, I grew up in the 90s. There was a lot of gun violence in the 90s. People talk about the 90s like, oh, this great era. Yeah, it had its moments, but it was also some traumatic things that happened there as well. And we have the necessary tools. We have the intellect. We have the energy. We have the time. We just have to focus and make it a priority. And most folks just want to complain and not add on to the positivity that could be possible if we
Mm.
just focus and come together, use our skills, and have a common goal to say, look, enough is enough. Let's put our minds together. Let's put our resources together and let's fix this.
Wow, man, that's a very profound statement. And I was thinking back when you said that the children help raise the community.
Yes.
When we look now, in a sense, we're failing the children because I was watching a school board meeting and how the parents, it was raucous and,
Mm-hmm.
there were half the people in there, the one group that was wearing masks
Wow.
and yeah, oh yeah. And I mean, just name calling, vulgarities. And I was looking, I said, now, when the kids see this,
Mm-hmm.
this becomes the model of how to act
Mm-hmm.
in
Yes.
their minds. And so you progress this 10 years down the line when their parents, they're going to be off the hook,
Right. Yeah.
you know? And so
Yeah.
we as a society, really, we have fallen down on our job
Mm-hmm.
to present an image to them that would be beneficial to them. The image we presented to them now is so negative, so programmed for somebody's benefit.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. And that's what I tell people. Our children act in the way they do, and they're not the only ones. We're
Yeah,
just we're just the ones mostly on TV doing it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
right, when our children act out of order like this, somebody's benefiting from it, and that
Hmm.
is the very insidious thing that I try to talk to my students about and their parents about is that trust and believe that when our children are acting a fool and children in general are acting a fool, somebody's benefiting from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
And as you're moving now along in your career, what would you say was the biggest obstacle or one or two obstacles that stood in your way between where you were and where you really wanted to go with your life?
Mm. I would like, that's a good question. Because I would like to say it was something physical, but to be honest, now that I really have more clarity, it was really a lot of self-doubt,
Mm, okay.
self-esteem issues.
Yeah.
Not necessarily from my parents, but just from society, to be very, very candid. As a dark-skinned young black boy, um, not really seeing a lot of imagery of myself on TV and
Mm-hmm.
media. Um, and that was reinforced for, thankfully, give thanks for my parents. My parents reinforced that my skin color was not something to be um, negatively looked at. It was something to be celebrated. And fortunately, I had that in my subconscious to be able to get me through a lot of things, and realize that I come from a rich heritage and I come from a notable family that you have you have the skills to get what you need. And they always were encouraging, but sometimes you have that doubt because I don't look like this, or I don't have these type of clothes, or these type of shoes, or toys, or what, or a house, or whatever. And it was a lot of that self doubt, going forward. And also just with school, I wasn't always a student in school. I
Mm-hmm.
actually felt the first grade, actually.
Mm-hmm.
uh
Okay.
I actually felt the first grade and had to repeat it and had to go
Uh-huh.
to reading resource classes. So that was a kind of stigma on me a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
my parents helped with that, and teachers too,
Mm-hmm.
and neighbors as well, and things like that. But yeah, self-doubt, a lot of self-doubt.
Mm.
And I got through that by, again, their encouragement, not being afraid to fail, because my dad was always about, hey son, try it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be scared to try things. If you don't do well, you just don't do well, and try something else.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean you can't do anything at all. So
Mm-hmm.
I had that reinforcement, despite my self-doubt. So, but that was the main thing, my own self-perception. And once I got past that and felt like, oh, I actually can do this, I'm actually pretty good at this.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm not as good as I thought I was, but that's okay because I'm good at something else. So
Yes.
that helped me to overcome those fears,
Yeah.
to
Well,
myself.
Kyle, when I listen to you, and you know, I think we all have those doubts. I know I myself had some myself.
Mhm.
Um, but I think back, and when we look at today's children, the society has made it such that many parents need two and three jobs
Mhm.
to survive.
Mhm.
And that takes away that time, that quality time that parents used to have with their kids.
Yeah.
And so you experienced self doubt, but you had a frame of reference through your parents, through your mom, through your dad, through your brother. You had a
Mhm.
frame of reference of a reality that was different from the one that your doubt was leading you to.
Indeed.
And so when we look at kids today, when many kids, white and black, don't have that because the economic system in which we live in is literally getting, what do they say, butter from the duck.
Mm.
So people need to work 50, 60 hours, 70 hours a week. And that takes away from the time that the kids can see you reading, can see you going to the art shows as your mom
Mhm.
used to take you, listening to jazz like your dad did with you. And
Yeah.
so, literally, our kids are being negatively programmed by this dynamic, not having that connection, that foundation. So, thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Great. No, that's a great point, Dr. Harris. You're right, because that's one thing my father used to tell me. He's like, children need time. You need to spend
Hmm.
time with your children.
That's
That's
it. Yeah.
that's it. It's really as simple as that. He's like, and he did. My mother and they spent time. They worked.
Hmm.
My mom worked the morning to afternoon shift. My dad worked the afternoon to midnight shift. So there was
Hmm.
always somebody rotating in and out of the house.
Uh-huh.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and my
Yeah.
dad would take me and my brother on the weekends and just spend time with us.
Yeah. Man, that was a blessing.
It was.
That was really a blessing. And that's a great model for the kids. With children, love is spelled Time.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
As they say, that's a bar, Doctor. That's a bar right there. Yeah. That's it. That's
That's
it.
it. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Now, did you, when you're on that path, did you find that there were many distractions, things that wanted to pull you away from where you were going?
Yes, not as many. And that's one thing I don't know where I got it from. But when I lock in on something, like
Mm-hmm.
I lock in. So
Mm-hmm.
so there were distractions,
Mm-hmm.
girls, uh, TV, sleep. So so there was just definitely distractions, but typically when I'm focused on something I really wanted, I go get it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's that competitive nature in me that comes out of like sports and also like just wanting to prove to myself, really. I think a part of which is interesting when I thought about it is part of my self-doubt also fueled my competitiveness
Okay.
because I always want to prove to myself at least that I deserve to be here
Mm-hmm.
and I deserve what I want. So I always felt like if I wanted the people that I admire, Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, you know, they went for it. So I was like, I'm gonna go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't get it, so be it. But I'd rather go for it and miss than not even take a chance.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. Hmm. So now you're on the path from teaching to entrepreneurship. What would you say is your greatest victory? The thing that you've accomplished over this lifetime to date? the,
Mm.
the greatest victory, the thing that you're most proud of?
I would probably say that, and this may sound cheesy, but the fact that I can still appreciate life and love life, um, and that I constantly remind myself that I'm grateful for what I have,
Mm,
um, and be able to be grateful. Just be able to be grateful, like be able to
yeah.
be grateful and love the fact that there are challenges, but that I still believe I have hope. I have hope and
Mm, yes. Yes.
faith. Because for a short time, there were times where I felt like I didn't have that, and I didn't know how I was going to get it back. Um, but that I still have hope and faith in myself and in others that we can do the right thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That mindset, that's like a mindset can be the most powerful victory to think a certain kind of way, to have a certain kind of attitude,
Mhm.
because that mindset can draw into you that which is congruent with it. Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any children now?
I don't have any children, as I said, not yet.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Not
Yeah,
yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I will say this, I don't have any children of my own, but of course my friends tell me, hey man, you've been teaching for all this years, so you fathered, big brother children for a long time. So I'm like, hey, I'll take it.
You'll take it. I
I'll
hear you.
take it.
Wow. Well, let's see. We're going to take another little pause for a moment. Just take a
Okay.
deep breath. Let it out. Welcome back to Success Talk. Dr. Herbert Harris and our guest is Kyle Dixon. Kyle, we're sort of getting down to the final part of this success talk, and I look and I'm just so impressed with what you've done and your mindset.
Mhm.
And so if you look back, on your life and look back to that young man who was thinking of becoming an entertainment attorney and, wasn't sure when stuff didn't work out the way you wanted it to do, and look at where you are now, what advice would you give your younger self for this journey that you where you are now?
Mm. That's a good one too. I'll probably say be patient and be confident.
Mm,
Be patient and be confident, because again, as a young person, I'm like thinking I wasn't as confident, like I mentioned earlier. I wasn't confident enough in certain things. And when I look back on it now, I was like, oh man, that was just a mindset going back to my
mm-hmm,
thought
mm-hmm,
and being patient, thinking that things have to come when you think they should come. It's like, no, they'll come when they're ready to come.
mm,
Uh, Even now. I think about that now. Like I tell myself now, be patient. Be persistent, but be
Mm-hmm.
patient. And that's what I would tell myself: be confident, young Kyle, and be patient.
Mm.
You know,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, this next leg of the journey, where do you see it going?
Mm. Now that's inquiring minds would like to know. No, I definitely see myself traveling more. Uh, Definitely having a family. Uh, Being more out front in the community, doing more things, workshops, engagement with our young people, getting more into my business because I have my media company. So connecting with that, staying connected with that as well, producing more things. But really, I want to create a certain type of institution because, again, our institutions are important. Something to leave a legacy behind, but definitely, get into this next chapter of my life. It's about legacy now.
Mm-hmm.
About what I want to make sure. I hope again, I'm not gonna wood. I want to live a long, 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 long life. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't want it to be long just for the sake of being long. I want to create legacy with that length. So
Yes.
it's really about that, like creating that legacy.
Wow. Well, Kyle, that I love that, creating that legacy. And
Mhm.
that's so important because the tracks we leave on the sand of time will always be there for others.
Mhm.
And so add value to those tracks. So that's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Success leaves footprints, as they say. They
Yes,
say
it
that.
does. Yes,
You
it
know,
does.
and
We
and, and
just
the ancestors didn't. The ancestors, everybody, that come before me. You all didn't do this in vain.
yeah.
It's for us to take up the baton, as they say, and keep going.
Well, I love that African tradition, the ancestors paying homage to the ancestors, libations for the ancestors, that this connection between and in many ways it's a connection to the infinite God, to the infinite consciousness.
Hmm.
They've made their transition so they are not bound by the physical constraints of a body, but they are connected now because they've moved to another level of consciousness. And so
Hmm.
that's a real strong piece of the African, you might say, heritage and
Yes.
vibration, this
Yes.
respect for the elders.
Indeed.
And when we
Indeed.
lose that, man, we see what we have right now.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
disconnect.
yeah,
It's that
yeah.
disconnect. It really is. You know.
Well, when you look at this period of really, it's really a growth and transition you're in.
Mhm.
If you can progress down the road, so you're 44 now. So by the time you're 67,
Mhm.
it's a now it's funny. In France, they're striking because they got to work 2 more years from 62 to 64. In America, you know, in America, we got to work to 67, and nobody even asked us whether we thought about it, whether we
Right.
cared.
Nobody.
Nobody.
It's not even a question. It's like, matter of fact, you're like 67. You sure you want to? That's kind of early. They're like, they're like, you sure you want to keep going a few more years?
There's no reason why you shouldn't work till 70.
Right, 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 right. Just round it out. Just go ahead and round it
Yeah,
out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. If you think back when you're 65, where you would like to be at that time,
Hmm.
and really project your promised land, what advice would you give your present self about how to move forward?
So, so you saying my 65 self talking to my present self?
Yes.
Wow. I'll probably say, uh, good job.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Probably say, you know, give thanks for taking care of me.
Wow. Yeah. Yes.
Give thanks for taking care of me.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So if my if I'm here at when I'm here at 65, not even if when I'm here at 65, my first utterance will be thank you, Lord, for bringing me to 65.
Yes, yes, it is. Indeed.
You know,
Yes,
I
yes.
guess number one on everybody's bucket list is like to be here.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I want to be here. Yes, I want to be still in the physical. Yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes, and healthy, you know.
Yes, yeah. Now, are you into health foods and what's your dietary piece like?
Yes, I'm very much into health. I started that as a teenager, influenced by the Nation of. Well, my mom influenced me to a degree. My dad did too, because they
Hmm.
were decently healthy. But the Nation of Islam was like a major influence on my brother and I because of their discipline with eating and how they carried themselves. So I stopped eating pork around 16 because my brother started first, and
Uh-huh.
then slowly but surely I end up cutting out beef and chicken because I was an athlete. I was an athlete in high school, and I wasn't the best athlete. I wasn't a star athlete, and I knew that. So I was like, how can I, because I'm, again, that's my competitive nature. How can I tweak my performance better than my competitors, even though I'm not the best athlete? So I
Hmm.
started looking at food and how our body processes. So cut out pork, then I cut out beef in college, and then slowly chicken in college, and then after I graduated, I went mostly vegetarian,
Hmm.
vegan for a hot minute, but I wasn't. It was heavy carbs. It was
Yeah,
heavy carbs.
yeah,
What they
yeah.
call it? Starchitarian. I was a
Yeah.
starchitarian, not a vegetarian, but starchitarian. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but now I do more like vegetarian, kind of really kind of pescatarian, but mostly veggies.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Don't do dairy. I cut out
Uh-huh.
dairy about 2 years ago, which was an amazing, by the way, for me. I know dairy is gonna have that big of effect on my health by
Yeah,
cutting it out. It
yeah,
really did. Like I don't get me. I didn't. And again, for the people who watched, it might sound crazy, but I didn't get a cold during COVID.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
did not get one cold,
yeah. Wow.
and I've never had that happen before, and that was due to
Yeah,
me cutting out dairy.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, my vocal coach says that puts so much mucus and stuff in your body. It's like putting glue in your body.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That. Well, when I'm in Chicago, I used to go to the Soul Vegetarian
Oh
Restaurant.
yeah. Oh yeah. On what, 71st, right? It's on 71st?
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Man, that was my spot. Boy, I get
Yeah.
the tofu and the glita. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm a sometime vegetarian. One of my goals is to get a cook. I want to get a, because, you know, I eat out a lot. Sandra and I, her health is not really super. And so we eat out a lot. And that really puts you at the mercy of the people who feeding you.
Mhm.
And so I've been checking these services out now where they'll prepare the meals according to your dietary, objectives. And that's our next step. So I
Okay.
appreciate you. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Health is wealth.
Health
Health is
as
wealth.
well.
Food is fuel, as Malcolm used to say. Malcolm X. Food is
Yeah.
fuel.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, we're down now. I think we've had just an amazing interview and you're sharing. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I would just like to say thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Harris, to be on your platform. I really appreciate, your energy and time in the community and you being able just to share your wisdom with us through your books, through your podcast, through your seminars. So I thoroughly, thoroughly really appreciate you. Um, and also to the community at large, I just want to say that we need to just really focus more on supporting each other how we can. There's a lot of hatred, a lot of pain, and people in emotional pain and anguish, and just have patience and grace with ourselves. Like we
Mhm.
really need to have grace and patience. And the more we have that with ourselves, the more we can share that with other people. And what I learned from one of my spiritual coaches is that you can't pour from an empty cup. Before
Mm.
you may want to help people, and I've experienced this as well. You may want to help people, but if your cup is not filled up with that love and that care and concern for yourself, then you're only as effective as that. And if you don't have anything to give, you're giving from an empty cup, and you're going to end up damaging yourself, uh, unfortunately. So again, have grace and patience with ourselves, and always strive to be our best. And also check out, I have a podcast too.
Yeah, yeah. Now tell us about that. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. What is your podcast? How can they access it?
Yes, so it's the Grand Rising Collective podcast. It's on YouTube with myself and my colleague Kaide Bentley, and it's about striving to be our best, striving to be excellent, always rising to the occasion, overcoming challenges and obstacles, and interviewing people in the community who have done that as well, and they do that in different aspects: education, medicine, um, health, wellness, finances, etc. So
Mm.
definitely would love for people to check it out.
Wow. Thank you. And so they can find that on YouTube, the Grand Rising Collective. Beautiful.
Right.
All right. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for being with us today, man. We have enjoyed this hour has gone by so fast. It's like
Yeah,
we just started, right?
I know. I know, right? It did. It did.
But
Time. We'll say when you're having fun, time moves fast.
time moves fast.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, thank you so much for being on the program. To our listeners, thank you so much. We appreciate your presence. You know, this is a broadcast that you'll listen to time and time again, and somewhere you'll see a nugget, an idea, a thought, just a word, a phrase that may be just that thing that you need to hear to help you be what you want to be, do what you want to do, and have anything you desire. Always knowing that the best is yet to come. Please make comments when you listen to our podcast. Please make comments. Please share. Please subscribe to our channels because your vibrations help us be better. When we know that you expect us to bring good things to you, we work hard to rise to the occasion. So thanks everyone for being here, always knowing that the best is yet to come. Dr. Herbert Harris, our website, herbertharris.com, where you can find the tools, anything you need to get anything you want. Once again, always knowing the best is yet to come. And so it is.